Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Myanmar's de facto leader, State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi, cancelled a trip to the United Nations General Assembly amid a spiralling crisis inside the country's Rakhine state. More than 370,000 minority Rohingya have fled to Bangladesh to escape violence since August 25th. One of the world's largest annual diplomatic occasions, the 72nd UN General Assembly opened in New York on Tuesday, with events expected to last for weeks to come. The latest outbreak of violence in Rakhine state was sparked by a series of alleged attacks on government border posts by Rohingya militants on August 25th. The UN Human Rights Chief on Monday said that the ongoing actions of Myanmar's armed forces, which are believed to have intensified following the August attacks, are a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the ongoing Rohingya crisis. Joining me on the program today are Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary; Rajat Sethi, Senior Research Fellow, India Foundation, joins us on the phone line from the Northeast, and Yatish Yadav, Deputy Editor, The New Indian Express. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador Sibal, I'd like to start with you. The Rohingya crisis is not something new. It has been going on for a long time now. It has come to the limelight yet again because of what happened on August 25th. Is there a solution in sight as far as the Rohingyas are concerned?
I don't think so. It's not going to be an easy solution, because you've seen the refugee situation in other parts of the world, in West Asia, the large numbers, several 100,000 who have entered Europe. They're not going to be sent back. So this is a crisis which governments find very difficult to handle. In this particular case, there's an additional problem, because there is a long-standing issue in Myanmar about the Rohingyas, whether they are actually Myanmarese nationals or they are Bengalis, as the Myanmarese call them. The 1982 constitution has deprived them of their citizenship. And there have been attacks in the past. There was the case of some rape of a local Buddhist woman, which triggered clashes a couple of years ago. And now, because terrorism has raised its ugly head, and this particular terrorist organization, I'm forgetting its name, Rakhine Salvation Army, something like that. They have been funded by Saudi Arabia. They've been trained in Pakistan. They attacked military and police posts, and there has been a very severe reprisal. Now, you must put this in the context of what is happening elsewhere in Myanmar. In the last few years, the diverse ethnic conflicts in Myanmar have been stabilized because of some agreements that have been reached. But Myanmar has a long history of ethnic clashes between the Burmans and the other ethnicities in the northern and other parts of the country. So it's not as if it is something unique. Now, finally, it is a big burden on Bangladesh, no doubt, and we should all sympathize with Bangladesh, because they have to bear the brunt of this crisis. But this is essentially something which has to be resolved between Myanmar and Bangladesh, and we can only offer our good offices if both sides want them, and also contribute financially to, as we have done during Prime Minister's visit to Myanmar. We have agreed to participate in the development of the Rakhine state. And if there's other ways we can help the refugees financially, I think we could be generous enough to do so. But the burden of this is not on our shoulders. Indeed. And I'm afraid this is an issue which has to be dealt by us with extreme caution, because we have huge stakes both in Myanmar and in Bangladesh, and we have a very difficult choice before us how to balance our interests in both countries.
Sure.
But there are other issues I can raise when you ask further questions, because I don't want to continue.
Indeed, sure. Sure. I'll come back to you, Ambassador, in just a bit to talk about some of the other aspects as well. But let me bring in Yatish Yadav now. You know, Yatish, the Ambassador raised a very important point about how there's very limited that India can do as far as the Rakhine state problem or the Rohingya crisis itself is concerned. But as far as Bangladesh is concerned, 370,000 plus refugees reaching Bangladesh in the span of just under 3 weeks. Can Bangladesh really handle this sudden influx of refugees?
Certainly not. Ambassador Sibal is very right that Bangladesh is facing a huge crisis, and they will not be able to do so because in Bangladesh there are certain groups, terror groups, that are linked to Rohingyas. It's not just the refugee humanitarian crisis that is there. That's a true picture, but at the same time, if you look at the terror groups that have been linked to the Rohingyas and support from Pakistan as well as from Saudi Arabia, the terrorist leaders like Abdul Qaddus operating out of Pakistan, Karachi, to be very specific. It will not be easy for Pakistan because JMB has a very strong roots in Pakistan as well as in Bangladesh, both. And JMB has been also operating in eastern part of India. Their activities in Assam, West Bengal is well known, Vardhaman blast. So it will not be easy for Bangladesh, though they have passed resolutions to asking Myanmar to take back all the refugees. They are saying that they total about 7 lakh, 3,70,000 plus some. They came 3 decades back. I mean, they have been coming regularly. But it will not be easy for Bangladesh even to deal with such a crisis because the vested interest, like Masood Azhar has already entered into the debate now. He has called for a jihad. So this will not be easy for Bangladesh, and as Major Sibal said, India needs to move with very caution. It needs to be very cautious because Bangladesh and Myanmar both are very sensitive countries, and
sure,
we need to move very cautiously on these issues.
Yeah, caution is the key word there. Both our speakers talking about how India should tread cautiously as far as dealing with the situation is concerned, because we have interests at stake in Bangladesh and in Myanmar. Let me bring in Rajat Sethi now, Senior Research Fellow, India Foundation, on the phone line, joining us from the Northeast. Rajat, India has been criticized by the UNHRC chief, saying that, precious little is being done by India. It's also deporting, or news is abuzz that India could deport 40,000 Rohingya immigrants who are in, or refugees who are in India at the moment. But there's precious little that India can do at this point in time, isn't it? Because, there are several intelligence reports that suggest that these Rohingyas are in cahoots with Pakistani-based terror groups, and, they could possibly strike in India at some point in time. So that is a major security concern for India as well. Well, we seem to have lost the line there with Rajat Sethi, but let me go back to Ambassador Kanwal Sibal and talk to him about something else now. Ambassador Sibal, there's been a lot of criticism as far as State Councillor Suu Kyi is concerned, but considering that the army still controls, the defense, the police, the home ministry and everything else, and the key portfolios really in Myanmar, what more can Suu Kyi really do at this point in time?
Well, too many expectations were raised of Aung San Suu Kyi. She received the Nobel Prize, and those who actually awarded the Nobel Prize to her now want her to act much more forcefully in the humanitarian situation that has developed without fully understanding the structure of power within Myanmar. And you have rightly said that the military has reserved to itself a lot of power in the state apparatus, and this is an issue on which Aung San Suu Kyi, who's had great difficulty in managing her own relationship with the military, and the whole process of democratization has been so long and so arduous. And finally, she's been able to reach a political position, but she has to handle this situation very carefully and not create a situation in which she has problems with the armed forces. So I think the criticism of Aung San Suu Kyi is highly exaggerated, and the UN Human Rights Commission and his head, who's a Jordanian national, should actually, I don't know whether he has made any pronouncements on the manner in which Saudi Arabia has dealt with the hapless Yemenis, or the Turks have been conducting massive reprisals against the Kurds. Turkey has been doing that against the Kurds for decades. I wonder if he has stated anything, said anything on that. Unfortunately, these people have no credibility of their own. They have been put in this UN Human Rights Commission when they come from countries and areas and regions where human rights are violated every other day, and there is no respect really for core human rights. But this is a political game, and unfortunately a religious color is being given to it, because if the Muslims get persecuted anywhere, then in a sense, like the communists, the Muslims of the world unite and start taking up their cause, which is a serious problem, because while on genuine humanitarian cases one can tolerate this, but this extends also to terrorism and radicalism and everything else. And as it has been rightly brought out, we have a problem within the Rohingya group of terrorist groups operating, and we have our security concerns. And finally, I would say that 40,000 Rohingyas have entered into India illegally, and that worries me, which means that we still are not in control of our border with Bangladesh, despite the fact that there are 20 million plus illegal Bangladeshis in this country. And on top of it, they have entered Jammu and Kashmir, where the demographics are so sensitive, where the Valley Kashmiris will not even tolerate the settlement of Hindu refugees from 1947, because they feel this is changing the demography of the state. And here you have thousands of them settled there. This also, I think, reflects badly on our internal controls. So all in all, it's a very difficult issue for us. I don't think we'll be able to deport these 40,000 Rohingyas, because neither Bangladesh nor Myanmar will accept them. And we have a big problem on our hands, and we must do everything to prevent more of the Rohingyas coming into the country.
Indeed, it is a difficult situation for the Rohingyas as well at this point in time. But, talking about what some of the other countries could have possibly done, Yatish Yadav, the ambassador, has rightly pointed out that the Saudis and some of the others have been funding terrorism in Bangladesh and elsewhere through the Rohingyas. Couldn't they have just decided at some point in time and, and done something for the Rohingyas, because the problem has been going on for several years now and it's not something new. So something constructive could have possibly been done.
Frank, what worries me is the way the Rohingyas are operating in India for the last couple of years. There has been several high-level meetings where they found that the Rohingyas have been able to access voter ID cards, Aadhaar cards, and some people were arrested for accessing, the passport, applying for the passport on the forged documents. And the movements, free movements that they had from one state to another, like moving from New Delhi to Belgavi in Karnataka and then to Hyderabad. So that worries me a lot, because illegal refugees having the links with the terror outfits, like Ambassador was pointing out about Saudi Arabia and Jordan. The Human Rights Commissioner, he said about that India should not do this deportation, but he should remember he's from Jordan. He should remember that last year some Syrian refugees were stranded at the Jordan border, and Jordan was not ready to open its border. At the same time, I would like to point out that money to the Rohingya Muslims, when the crackdown started in 1982, the whole narratives of the Rohingya refugee was very different, that military was persecuting Rohingyas. But I would like to point out that in 2001, when the tapes were found in Afghanistan about the radical Rohingyas terror outfits having links with the Saudi Arabia, there is one group which is Harkatul Yaqeen, which operates out of Saudi Arabia. Their leaders are based in Saudi Arabia. So it's, the whole structure of and the whole dimension of this Rohingya refugee crisis, apart from the humanitarian crisis and people being persecuted, is also of national security concerns. And what worries is that even in Mewat, they are having some Aadhaar card. So the talks in security establishment is that, do we have a monitoring system so we can monitor? If we can't deport them, at least we can have the database of all these Rohingyas and we can monitor them properly, their movements as well as their activities, I think that is going to be a serious concern in the next 6 months, because if we are not able to deport them, at least we need strong monitoring mechanism against the Rohingya Muslims.
Okay, fair enough. Veena Sikri, former diplomat, joins me on the program now. Ambassador, welcome. Thank you for joining us on the program. You know, criticism is one aspect of it. Everyone's being, you know, the UNHRC chief is criticizing India. Suu Kyi has been criticized. Everyone has been criticized as far as the Rohingya crisis is concerned. But no action has been taken by any of these. You know, 56 states have come forth and criticized the Rohingyas, but none of them have decided to take any concrete action. I mean, what's happening?
I think that one has to be very clear on the situation, that every country is fully within its rights to look at it from their respective points of view. And for India, in addition to the humanitarian aspect, the national security aspect is vital. And I think here we must look more carefully at the outcome of the Kofi Annan report. If you remember, after the 2015 elections in Myanmar, State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi had appointed former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan to give a report on the situation, to report on the Rakhine situation. In fact, his interim report came out a short while ago, and the complete report was released the day that this happened. The day that the present round of brutalities in Myanmar, the attack on the Myanmar security forces by the Rohingyas, by this new organization called ARSA, the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, which is a new grouping, which has even been written about by the International Crisis Group. I must recall two documents. One is the Kofi Annan report, as I said, the interim report. He has clearly mentioned 2 or 3 very important aspects. One is the whole citizenship issue for the Rohingyas within Myanmar, and also the illegal immigration issue between Myanmar and Bangladesh. As we know, the crisis is because the Myanmar nationality law of 1982, citizenship law, does not include the Rohingyas, and they call them the Bengalis. There is a question that people whose grandfathers were born in Myanmar, they have the right to some form of citizenship, whether full citizenship or associate or what they call citizenship by descent. But the census of the Rohingya is not complete. It's going very slowly. The Rohingya people themselves are not cooperating and saying, oh, it doesn't happen. On the other side, in Bangladesh itself, there are these refugees, and Bangladesh government itself is aware of the security situation. They in fact have adopted a law where they allow the Rohingyas to marry the citizens of Bangladesh because they are worried about the children and so on. So Bangladesh itself is worried about the security situation, but now they are so overwhelmed with the numbers that they need help on the humanitarian side, and this is a very valid point from the point of view of Bangladesh. So I think that India needs to have discussion. Bangladesh and Myanmar in the first place need to have discussions. And to sort out this question, India needs to have discussions with Bangladesh and with Myanmar. I think that the suggestion made by your panelists about a very strict identification, whether it is in Jammu or whether it is in other parts of India, in Hyderabad and others, needs to be done. The second document I was referring to is a report of the International Crisis Group based in Brussels, and they brought out a report in December last year, because in October last year in Myanmar, again there was a strong attack on the Myanmar forces by the armed Rohingyas. Sure. Obviously their money and finance is coming from somewhere. The December report of the International Crisis Group said very clearly that a new insurgent group, a new fundamentalist organization called the Haraka al-Yaqin, based in Saudi Arabia, headed by Rohingyas, has been formed. And they are now sending money and finance to the Rohingyas in Myanmar and enticing them to attack. And this ARSA, the ARSA, is actually the local group of that Haraka al-Yaqin, which is based in Saudi Arabia. Sure. So when this kind of international fundamentalist grouping is going on, we have to look at it. In fact, you may have seen some reports in the papers that the current attack around August 25th on the Myanmar forces was the intercepts on that were caught by the Indian and the Bangladesh intelligence agencies, and they were coming out of Pakistan. Okay. And Pakistan ISI officers were talking to the people in Myanmar and telling them, look, now the report is going to be released, you please attack. Sure. So there is an international insurgent group, in a radical group dimension to this, which is very serious. Sure. And India is very much within its right to look at it and to see how best we can ring fence ourselves against the implications of this group. Okay. We have already seen that illegal immigrants from Bangladesh are very liable to be used by these fundamentalist groupings for terrorist attacks in India. And that's the concern. And now if you have this Rohingya group happening, we're going to have a big problem.
Okay, we're going to have a big problem. I think that has been asserted on this program. Moving ahead now, Rajat Sethi, Senior Research Fellow, India Foundation, joins us on the phone line right now. You know, Rajat, the problem as far as the Rohingyas are concerned, the crisis is well and truly a problem at this point in time. But how do we deal with the situation immediately? What immediate steps need to be taken?
Well, I think, like most of the analysts at your show have highlighted, that there are four clear dimensions. One is the internal problem of Myanmar. The second is the countries who are receiving the migrants, which is primarily Bangladesh and India. Then the next dimension is the global community, which is looking at this problem with close scrutiny. And the last dimension is the terrorist angle, which has complicated the entire situation. Now, as today our Home Minister has made a statement that Rohingyas is a national security concern, and before we start taking in more migrants, we will have to be careful in terms of identifying what the complications are, and are there any larger global forces that are orchestrating the movement of the Rohingya migrants into India. As you would be aware, in Hyderabad, there have been 3-4 Rohingya families who have been caught with Aadhaar number and all other documentation that a normal citizen would have. This shows that there are forces who are assisting them in getting naturalized before the law would allow them.
Sure.
So these are the dimensions which are complicating things, and as of now, the immediate thing that we need to do is to identify where they are, locate them, and closely monitor the movement of the Rohingyas before we induct the next batch.
Okay, fair enough. Ambassador Sibal, I've got time for one final comment on the program now, so I'm going to come to you and ask you, you know, the UNSC is to discuss the Rohingya crisis later today. Is there anything concrete that is going to come out of it?
Well, China has already made statement against any form of sanctions on Myanmar because there has been talk of sanctions. In fact, The Economist wrote a piece recently advocating this. And this is the usual arrow in the quiver of these countries that resolve issues by sanctioning countries without actually understanding the immense complexities, political complexities behind these issues. So China is there. I think, I don't know about Russia, but Russia would also be very careful in not going along with along the sanctions route, because they themselves have been subject to sanctions repeatedly by United States and Europe. So I don't think much will come out of the UN Security Council, though it is a problem for Myanmar, because their international reputation is being severely damaged, as well as that of its leader. And this is an issue, a humanitarian issue, on which a lot of people can start wringing their hands and engage in a lot of rhetoric and feel very good about what they're doing. But this really is not very helpful. I think diplomacy is needed. Talks are needed rather than using sticks to try and beat the Myanmar military government and Aung San Suu Kyi to the ground. I don't think that is the right way to go. And whatever we can do diplomatically to bring the two sides together and to try and prevent the situation from escalating further, we should be ready to do, because Bangladesh is in a bit of a crisis, and the Sheikh Hasina government is a friendly government, and we should support it. But I'm not in agreement with the commentaries that are coming out of Bangladesh, that because they have cooperated with us in curbing anti-Indian insurgents and have cooperated with us, and therefore we have a moral obligation to help them in this issue. No, it is not as straightforward as this.
Okay.
Bangladesh
Ambassador-
pursues its own national interests vis-a-vis China. They support the BRI. China is the biggest defense partner. So they put the India and China relationship in separate boxes, and therefore they should allow us to put our Myanmar relationship in a separate box.
Okay. Okay.
But we should be able to find some diplomatic means of giving the Bangladeshi, especially the Sheikh Hasina government, some comfort.
Okay, yes, quick closing.
You know, I think India is fully within its rights to place before the international community this point, that national security concerns will always override, and any refugee
Right.
group staying in India, we have extended humanitarian support liberally without any, but if they are going to behave in a manner that is going to affect India's national security,
Right.
then India cannot compromise on that national
Okay,
security.
fair
If this
enough.
message goes out, this will be very vital.
Okay, on that note, then I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Veena Sikri, Kawal Sibbal, Rajat Sethi, and Yadav, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have today. See you again next time.